This video is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. In April of 2017, China's People's Liberation Army began to undergo considerable reform. Among the reforms was the reorganization of China's infantry and armored divisions into combined arms brigades, similar to Russia's reforms of 2009. However, unlike Russia, China's brigadization seems to have been more dramatic and heavily influenced by American brigade combat teams. This video is going to look at China's Army and Marine infantry squads, including heavy, medium, light, and amphibious forces. Before we get started, make sure to take the info in this video with a grain of salt. We're relying mainly on what is reported in Chinese media, much of which is backed up by photographic evidence, but could also be considered hearsay because primary sources are hard to come by. Let's start with an overview of the basic types of infantry in the PLA ground forces. The ground forces maneuver brigades can be broken down into four types: heavy combined arms, medium combined arms, light combined arms, and amphibious combined arms, which are separate from the Navy's Marine brigades. The first three brigades are equivalent in capability to American armored, striker, and infantry brigade combat teams respectively. There is no US Army equivalent to the Chinese amphibious combined arms brigade, which are also much heavier than the light infantry-based US Marine Corps. Rather, they appear to be similar to an armored brigade combat team, but with an amphibious capability. Light infantry are mostly motorized, transported in 3.5-ton trucks, but the mountain infantry and new high-mobility infantry have also been equipped with the armed and armored KSK Warrior 4x4 off-road vehicles to increase their mobility and firepower. The medium brigades are based on the ZBL-8, an 8x8 wheeled infantry fighting vehicle, and supporting vehicles derived from the same chassis. While transported on wheeled vehicles, the Chinese medium infantry can still be described as mechanized infantry, with the ZBL-8 being closer in capability to the Striker Dragoon rather than the regular Striker. Meanwhile, the heavy brigades are China's primary tank force. Their main maneuver forces are their four combined arms battalions, each of which have 2 tank companies and 2 mechanized infantry companies in addition to artillery and other support. And lastly, the Army Amphibious Brigades appear to be combined arms tank and mechanized infantry units that actually outnumber the Navy's own Marine brigades. The Army's brigades appear to be a heavy, second-wave force that are intended to exploit and expand a beachhead initially created by the lighter Marine Corps brigades, which by contrast are a mix of mechanized, air assault, and special operations forces. And now for the squads, let's start off with the Army's Heavy Armored Infantry, part of the Heavy Combined Arms Brigades. These are infantry mounted in the ZBD-4A, or older Type 86 infantry fighting vehicle. This squad organization also appears to apply to the Army's Amphibious Armored Infantry squads, who are mounted in ZBD-5 amphibious infantry fighting vehicles. The squad consists of 9 personnel. 2 act as permanent vehicle crew, while 6 or 7 dismount. The squad comes under the overall command of the squad leader, who typically ranks sergeant or staff sergeant and is armed with a QBZ-95 rifle. They act as the vehicle commander when mounted, but may also dismount with the squad. It seems that this is optional and may depend on unit standard operating procedures. From the photos we've seen, the squad leader seems to usually dismount in heavy armored infantry units, while in the amphibious armored infantry, they seem to remain mounted. However, this is based on only a handful of photos, so we can't say whether this is a rule. The leader is assisted by a deputy squad leader, who is usually a corporal. They're also armed with a QBZ-95 rifle. In some photos, we can see that one rifleman is armed with a QLG-10 grenade launcher and a QBS-9 semi-automatic shotgun. We're unsure if there's a rule to who gets these or if they're issued on an ad hoc basis, but based on the photos we've seen, it either goes to the deputy squad leader or one of the squad's riflemen. But at the same time, sometimes there's no underbarrel grenade launcher in the squad. When dismounted, the squad leader and deputy squad leader both lead a fire team. The squad has 2 light machine gunners, both armed with QBB-95 light support weapons, and they presumably each form the base of fire for a fire team. Additionally, the squad has a designated marksman equipped with a QBU-88 designated marksman rifle. This rifle fires the same cartridge as the other service rifles in the squad, but can also use a special sniper cartridge similar in concept to the Russian SVD. The dismount element is then rounded out by 2 riflemen, both armed with QBZ-95 rifles. They would most likely act as assistants for the light machine gunners, if nothing more than to carry extra magazines for them. This would allow for the dismounted element to consist of 2 asymmetric fire teams of 4 men and 3 men respectively. Disposable light anti-tank weapons in the form of the PF-89 can also be distributed as needed and available. The vehicle is then crewed by a dedicated driver and gunner, both of whom are usually armed with QSZ-92 service pistols, or less commonly, with QBZ-95 carbines. In addition to this, there are a couple of other variations. Sometimes in the armored amphibious infantry, a PF-98A rocket launcher team replaces one of the light machine guns. This also eats up a rifleman who, while armed with their personal rifle, would also have to carry 2 rounds for the rocket launcher as well as a monopod. The 2 rounds carried can be a mix of HE or tandem heat. The gunner, however, would then be armed with a pistol. Although bulkier than other squad level launchers like the RPG-7 or Carl Gustav, the PF-98A is arguably superior to both systems as an anti-tank weapon with up to 800mm of penetration reported with its tandem heat round. The PF-98 is a normal fixture in China's light and medium infantry squads as a pretty capable unguided anti-tank option. However, it's less common in the heavy infantry following reforms due to the ZBD-4 and ZBD-5 infantry fighting vehicles already having an anti-tank capability. It may also be the case that only 2 out of 3 squads in an amphibious platoon would be equipped with the PF-98, while the third would have 2 saws. Another variation that's been seen in both amphibious infantry and heavy armored infantry squads, although less common, is the inclusion of a QLZ-87 automatic grenade launcher rather than a PF-98 or a second saw. This is a relatively light, magazine-fed grenade launcher, able to fire from the shoulder or bipod when deployed at the squad level. It's roughly equivalent to a South African MGL, but about twice as heavy at 12 kilograms and sporting a higher muzzle velocity and higher effective range. The medium armored infantry squad is fairly similar to the heavy infantry, but retains the PF-98A rocket launcher. Based on photos of the medium squad, they don't appear to have a designated marksman rifle, although we don't know if this has changed in the more recent past. Thus, the medium squad consists of 1 squad leader, 1 deputy squad leader, 1 PF-98A gunner and assistant gunner, 1 SAW machine gunner, 2 riflemen, a vehicle gunner, and a vehicle driver. As in the heavy variant, the dismounts would form 2 fire teams on the ground, led by each of the squad leaders. As for the light infantry, there are a number of variants depending on the type of light infantry, but they all share roughly the same organization with minor differences. Unlike the armored infantry, the light infantry generally don't have dedicated vehicle crews except for some of the mount infantry and high mobility infantry, which we'll get to in a little bit. Overall, they still have a basic 9-man squad. First, we'll start off with the Marine Corps Air Assault Squad. We're talking about the Marine Corps now, rather than the Army's amphibious infantry. Marine air assault infantry are meant to be inserted via helicopter. They also make use of the Lynx 8x8 all-terrain vehicle, which is a light-wheeled vehicle used mostly by paratroopers and special operations forces. These are small vehicles, typically holding 6 men, that can fit inside of or be slung under an Mi-17 helicopter. The squad has a squad leader and a deputy squad leader, each of whom lead a fire team. The squad further consists of a PF-98 rocket launcher with a gunner and assistant, a QBU-88 designated marksman, a QBB-95 light machine gun, and 3 riflemen. This appears to be the same organization as the Army's regular motorized infantry squad before the 2017 reforms, with the exception of the pre-reform squad lacking a designated marksman rifle. Rather, 1 rifleman per platoon would be given designated marksman duties in lieu and be armed accordingly. We don't know with certainty if this has changed, but regardless, it seems that this squad organization is more or less the same for the Army's motorized infantry. The last squad we'll be covering is the High Mobility Infantry. High Mobility Battalions are a new addition to China's lineup. They're intended to be high readiness, quick reaction units within China's light combined arms brigades that supplement the more numerous motorized infantry. Currently, China fields 1 High Mobility Battalion for every 3 motorized infantry battalions in their light brigades, although it appears to be an intermediate term goal to convert more motorized infantry into high mobility. Unlike the motorized infantry, who are usually transported administratively in Dongfeng EQ-2102 and newer MV3 trucks, the high mobility infantry are transported in the new Warrior KSK series 4x4 armored utility vehicles. These vehicles are armed with a remote weapon system capable of mounting a 12.7mm heavy machine gun, a 35mm automatic grenade launcher, or a Red Arrow anti-tank guided missile. Further, they're armored against small arms fire, making them more capable as combat vehicles in their own right. The newest variants of the Warrior are the KSK 181 and 141, which can fit an entire squad plus an extra man. In the older and smaller KSK 131, only a little over half of a squad can fit in each vehicle, meaning a 3-squad platoon would require 5 vehicles in total. Because of the new platform, the high mobility infantry have a slightly different squad from the regular infantry that's almost a mix between the medium and light infantry squads. It consists of a squad leader and deputy squad leader, both armed with rifles, as well as a PF-98 rocket launcher gunner and assistant gunner, a SAW gunner, and 3 riflemen. However, unlike the regular infantry squad, there's also a vehicle driver doubling as a gunner for the remote weapon system, who's personally armed with a QBZ-95 carbine. It seems probable once dismounted the squad would form 2 fire teams, which would likely be based around one key weapon system. So one group would have a PF-98 and the other would have a SAW. Prior to reforms, it's also possible that the PF-98 and SAW would be in one fire group, while the riflemen would form an assault group under the deputy squad leader. We've seen both scenarios described in Chinese media. And now I want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters, especially our producers Aaron Moore, Glennon Nelson, Joshua Baker, Julian Bauman, Kyle Swartz, and Michael Clark. We have a new shirt and poster design on our store linked in the description, featuring the US Army's 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. If you're a patron at the corporal tier or above, you get access to all the full-size image files for our posters. And that's just one of the perks. Patrons also get early access to videos and scripts, exclusive wallpapers, patron-only chat on our Discord, and shoutouts. If you're interested in helping Battle Order grow, consider becoming a patron at the link in the description. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you all in the next one.